Shalom and welcome to our friends in Israel who are live with us here at the Peoria Riverfront Museum, and also our friends here in Central Illinois and members of the Peoria Riverfront Museum who have joined us. This is an extraordinary, first of its kind live cast from the museum in an extraordinary partnership with the Jewish Federation of Peoria and our friends in the Galilee region, and a special partnership you'll hear more about in just a minute. We're here with Preston Jackson, the famous artist, one of the greatest artists in the history of Illinois, and his masterpiece, lifetime work, Bronzeville to Harlem, An American Story, which has just been dedicated and promised to this museum as a permanent feature of storytelling, inspirational power, just on March 6th. So you're among the first to see it and the first live stream we've ever done of this nature. So we'll be joined by Preston Jackson in a minute. I'm John Morris, the president and CEO of the Peoria Riverfront Museum, and was certainly privileged to be able to travel to Israel in February of 2020, just before the world shut down, as a special guest of our Jewish Federation here in Peoria, in a great cultural exchange that allowed me to meet with cultural leaders and museum officials and many others, including my good friends who were involved with the partnership there. So a real quick minute, the Peoria Riverfront Museum here in Peoria, Illinois, is the only museum of its kind in the nation, a museum of art, science, history, and achievement. Our mission is to inspire people and to unleash the full talent and genius of every individual. So as we enter our 9th year of business, sitting along here, the beautiful Illinois River in the background, this extraordinary exhibition is one of many things we do, but one of the things I'm most proud of our team here at the museum, our curatorial staff, our board of directors, having stepped forward to make this collaboration with artist Preston Jackson possible. So before we introduce the artist, we want to hear from our partners in this live stream cast, and that is Sue Katz, the executive director and president of the Jewish Federation of Peoria. Sue.
Thank you, John, and I want to thank everybody for being on the call. As John mentioned, I'm Susan Katz. I'm the executive director of the Jewish Federation. We're members of a partnership with the Western Galilee Consortium and 16 federated communities throughout the United States. The intent of this partnership is to do joint programming and really people-to-people relationships and strengthen our relationship with Israel. Last year, right before COVID, we went on a community opinion leaders trip, the first of its kind, to the partnership. There were 9 communities from the partnership. Northwest Indiana was represented, Louisville, Dayton, Peoria, and several other communities. And we took opinion leaders from our communities to Israel to learn more about Israel, to visit the Western Galilee, to see the diversity and to see what it looks like on the ground. For many of them, it was their first trip to Israel. So this has really enhanced our relationship with the museum, and it's enhanced the relationships that all of our community opinion leaders have in their communities with Israel and with their local communities. So it's my pleasure, really, and I want to thank John and Preston for giving us this opportunity to share what's happening in our little corner of the world in Peoria, Illinois, with people in Israel and throughout Peoria. So let's get started.
Thank you very much. So now let me give an introduction that will be nowhere near what it deserves to be. But I'll tell you that the man you're about to meet is one of the Lincoln Laureates of Illinois, the highest honor that our state of Illinois gives out. He is a masterful storyteller through his art. He's a sculptor, and he is a painter, and he draws, and every kind of creative force you can imagine. He's also a jazz guitarist, a car collector and enthusiast, a Tai Chi master, and he is an historian like no other. He is of Illinois, born in Decatur, a graduate of Southern Illinois University and the University of Illinois. He was the chairman of the sculpture faculty at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, one of the most prestigious schools of art in the United States. And we're very pleased to call him a friend and a neighbor here in Peoria, and a citizen of Peoria, and a world-class artist. So help me welcome Preston Jackson, Bronzeville to Harlem. So we'll get started, Preston. I think you could probably, by the way, we're all vaccinated, and that's why you see us without our, for the moment. And we are staying 6 feet apart still. So what I want to do, Preston, is maybe just tell our friends live a little bit about how this project came about 25 years ago.
Okay. Thank you, John and Sue, for inviting me to this. It gives me an opportunity to disclose what I believe in. I think that's the most important thing, and that's for or why. I call myself an artist. I'm definitely involved with the making of objects, but what's most important is that I make objects that speak to us. I make objects that are socially relevant, social commentary. Every part of this planet deserves the right to be heard. And I speak of the evils and the successes at the same time. I think with that said, we'll go inside the piece. It's called an installation. It's called an installation. And it involves walls, space, and also sounds, and definitely a combination of all of the disciplines in art. So with that said, let's go.
Shall we enter the piece?
Mm-hmm.
This is an incredible work of art insofar as it's a full immersion work. You can see it here in the background. And where should we start, Preston?
Well, right here. This is my history as far as knowledge. Is what I think of is not formal or anything like that, but it's a life history from the entire universe. The seas, the mountains, civilizations, of various times that developed for what reasons. So I'll start with Ward Chapel. Ward Chapel is a Methodist church that is a part of Peoria and also a part of my culture also. But I don't think of one religion when I speak of these, because in my neighborhood as a child, I was raised, well, we always say it takes a village, but that's very true. It's just that we didn't focus on that. It was just there, and we had no idea. The Jewish community was so big in large in my life. Also, people from Europe and various places. I had never experienced or seen people from Africa, because in those days, in the 50s, they were fighting for their independence and going through a lot. So to say this without catering to a particular group of people, it's all of us. And this piece reflects how I grew up.
This Ward Chapel, Preston, is among the many buildings represented here. This one is actually here in Peoria, Illinois.
Yes, and we also, had many churches, maybe 5 or 6 African-American churches. But, as you grow older, you begin to see the similarities. Not only that, but you experience the blending. That's a good word. But the blending in your community. Getting back to the way, and I like to make examples on the street called Sunset Street in Decatur, Illinois. That is where I was raised. We, remember people that were very famous. The Kesslers, Greenberg, all of these stores and all of these wonderful things like that well, we supported each other. That's what I'm attempting to say. We supported each other, and those things were done with love and respect. Now, that is a reflection on my parents, because as I grew older, I began to realize differences, and both good and bad, but there was things that needed to be addressed because I didn't want to, well, my parents, of course, didn't want us to be raised thinking that one race of people or religion is better than the other. And that I have to thank them for.
Your
because,
father, what was his profession?
well, he was a minister,
Minister.
first of all, and foundryman. He dealt with metals. I mean, he worked in a foundry, and at that time, and I didn't know that my life would be almost the same, because
Working in the
wax-
foundry with bronze.
right,
Amazing.
and learning the process of the lost wax process that it takes in metal work. But getting back again, and excuse me if I jump around a lot, but there's a lot to say, and there's a lot in me, and it should be it should be said, it should be brought out. But yes, this church, Mrs. Gibbons, and Bessie, they are the mothers of the church. The building itself reminds me of the size of the building and with the arms out and the symmetry but it reminds me greatly of the power of the women in our church. So that this is a very interesting and valuable piece. Getting back to Sunset Avenue, I was born during the war times, and I wasn't aware. I was too young to understand what was going on in Germany. And after, with just little inklings, little pieces of information, what was going on, I began to put it all together at that tender age. And the things that I found out, I began to have nightmares. I actually, as a child, began to have nightmares. The book, the writings of Anne Frank, I understood it. But that was partially because of my imagination. I think it wasn't so limited, but I think I was, very fortunate to have the ability. But our parents supplied us with a lot of reading materials. The people down the street, they were from Europe, fresh from Europe, and I would always question the sound of their accents, which to me was a sound of beauty. Later, I became a musician, but I was aware of the ethnicity that flourished through our neighborhood. There was African music, there was Indian and Asian music and sounds. I had seen for the first time at the age of 7 an Asian person, and nothing but the word beautiful could explain the differences. The differences brought the idea of beauty to me. Our doctors, Dr. Flaxman, a beautiful person in my life. But I definitely noticed that we depended on each other's skills. And
This is all Decatur, growing up
this is
in
Decatur.
community.
But the fact is that I learned this stuff early,
Early on.
Mhm.
Kind of made, it shaped your outlook that we see so much in
Exactly.
Bronzeville to Harlem, but
And that's where it happened.
in Decatur.
Yeah,
It
that
starts
was
in the
my-
small town of Illinois, Decatur, 90 miles or so from here.
Mhm.
Your father, back to your father for a minute, is represented one place in this exhibition. Right? Is that right? Or two places?
Oh yeah, I built him.
So can you show us?
Oh,
And
here's one right here.
let's here's one right here. Carolina, maybe you can, our camera operator can show us your father, and that
I
your
am.
father's all suited up. Who is he holding in his arms?
Right. Okay. I'm a twin. Well, yeah, I have a twin sister. Her name is Priscilla. And this is when we were brought home from the hospital, St. Mary's Hospital. And this is me on the left and my twin sister Priscilla on the right. And we have 3 sets of twins in our family. And I like to attribute or try to explain that but there's a lot of truth in it. With my imagination, the eastern coast, western coast of Africa, there was a place, Benin and other places in Africa where twins were very common. And I like to think of we are connected to.
And also revered.
Yes.
Revered. So,
Right.
yeah, interesting. And
Yes.
your father, does he appear at another place in the exhibition as well?
Right. Here, if we can.
So let's move over here.
Before we have Reverend Reverend T.J. Jackson. Again, you can see his briefcase, and this is an object that I'm very familiar with because I would always clean and polish this briefcase. It had this real rough animal skin and very elegant, but I thought of it as a container of magic and wisdom. But that was my favorite object in the house.
Amazing. And so to back away here a little bit with the camera. So Preston, describe your father's standing outside of this incredible creation. By the way, this is all from found
Objects.
objects.
Right, found objects welded together, scrap steel. I mean, Margaret Hanley and Lucas Steele provided me, in the early stages of Bronzeville to Harlem, that's 25 years ago, and with the materials to create these throwaway materials. And I wanted to put them together to make it seem as though this is a casting, one object.
A single
sand
casting. Yeah.
Right.
And these are solid bronze,
Right.
painted,
Right.
and there are hundreds of these figures, all based on true characters, real life characters.
Yes, yes.
Who are we? Who's your father's overlooking these two outside of the
Right.
Rum Boogie, the Ritz? Who are these characters?
Well, that's Joe Louis, the famous boxer that I remember the sounds of people congratulating him and so on and so forth. And that's he and his wife leaving the Rum Boogie. This is a part of his establishment as he became very famous for defeating Maximilian back in the 1940s.
And there's your dad hanging out with Joe Louis. That's amazing. Carolina, if you could back away so we can see the entire installation here, just one of dozens that are in this. But you get the feeling, Preston, of how it all speaks to each other, the gesture. Can you comment on how did you create this sense of energy between all of these figures?
Mm-hmm. Well, this one table, that's how I refer as our neighborhood. There's a lot more going on than one would expect. The B building. There was an entrepreneur person in the city of Chicago that created this place, to share and loan money and to buy buildings and also shelter for other people. But here is an example of my intent. We see this Asian establishment, and it's not just typical stereotype kinds of things like
The
a
dragon.
restaurant or no, Asians were just like myself and my family. They had families. We all had families, and the poison in this whole thing is when you separate people and say certain things belong to only to. No, there was the blending. That's my favorite word for this. We see the Mercedes-Benz, and that's an object by a German manufacturer, and it's not on purpose that I try to hide the fact that politically there was differences, because there were, and that's obvious, and we know that. But at the same time, the families that we lived near were of all cultures. And I just want to keep that out front. In many areas in my installation, I'm constantly saying that maybe a little too much, but you have to shout sometimes.
You have to shout. Let's enter the piece.
Okay.
Amazing, because most works of art you can't say let's enter,
Right.
but we are entering.
Okay, we're going to the right side, the western part. I mean, yeah, I don't know whether I'm right or left, but anyway, we're going to the western part of the installation. And these are real people, like Alex Basin, a person that was a part of my growing up, and the Chicago Defender, that family, since that they still exist in Chicago, and they were heavily connected, involved with the Chicago Defender, who was responsible for bringing us, our people here, during that time. And we have the Kesslers family, who also contributed and was a part of the building of this piece, especially Joy Kessler, which is the daughter of Nate and Sarah. But it takes that type of involvement to create something, because we are of one mind, meaning that our politics are very much the same. We understand. We understand a lot of the same things. Oh, yeah.
So let's take a look here. Up on the bridge, there's a sailor.
Right, and this is that family that I just mentioned. Yes, the soldiers that came back from World War II, and the stylized kind of configurations or the fashions, the fashions of the day, the squared shoulders and so forth. And here we see an interracial couple.
Very interesting. And you see, and sort of back away here, Carolina, and pull out to show the entirety of this really bridge scene.
And we see people, dealing with leisure, being
playing checkers.
Right. It's all so dark because underneath this little bit of stolen time, there was places that people actually communicated and danced and sang. But in doing all of that, they blended. I mean, they shared their culture.
Let's talk about this then.
Oh. Okay. The Letitia. I don't know whether very many people are, but that was a place in France after the war. The scene is after the war. And sometimes I was so moved by what had happened. The labor camps were emptied. Now, can you imagine something so devastating and large with people that had the ability to contribute? I always think that probably cancer and diseases and everything would have been cured if some of the people in those labor camps were freed, if they had been freed. This could have, so, good comes from, but when we go to the bad side, the murder side of life, we destroy things that could have been. And when the people came from those camps, Dachau, places like that, after the war or the emptying of these camps, they rejoined, just like in slavery. The Great Migration of African Americans were spurred on by the fact that we want to know our relatives. We want to know where they went, where they are. It's the same thing that happened here. And I can imagine, as Mrs. Kessler, she explained to me that they quietly gathered, sipping coffee. Some still in prison garb, but the scars on the mind, a physical thing that you cannot hide. And they would quietly, whispering inside this cafe that was provided by the owners for people to come together and get their lives together again. So that's a very important piece in this.
The use of the animal to the side there.
Right. I all of nature, these are things, plants, certain plants that we're familiar with. All of these things that are brought into this.
Yeah, come around and look at this side.
And the greenery and life slowly came back. It's like turning on a switch. It doesn't quickly happen, but the glow of life slowly enriches. That's why you see this tree.
Extraordinary.
Anyway, you'll see there are many things like this,
Yeah.
addressing such things.
Preston, let's turn around and take a look at this towering green entire scene of the gathering at what looks to be a Civil War style memorial. But tell us what we're looking at here.
Okay. Well, it is about humanity. It is about ideas that are quoted. And this is a World War I soldier and soldiers, Black soldiers, Egyptian, Palestinian, people of various backgrounds once again felt the urge of life to come together. Isn't that what everything is about? Should be naturally, it's that way. But it's the evils of man's mind that separates us, and it causes things like world wars. Anyway, this is an area just like the Letitia, same thing, the gathering, like magnets coming together, like beautiful flowers shedding or dispersing their seeds, and beautiful things happen, things grow of all colors and beliefs. And here we see Marcus Garvey with his extended hand, who was a believer of freedom and going his own way to teach the people, not one religion or based on one religion, but all religions. And the garb that you see, or the dress that the type of uniform that he has on was fashioned, on purpose, because he thought of his movement as an army. It's a group of people that had the idea of, let's leave this place of hatred and so forth. Many times that's your only choice, and that's what he believed in. We see the soldier.
And this is, I misspoke earlier. I said Civil War. This World War I.
Yes.
But I think Civil War is on my mind because of the recent taking down of so many monuments in the country.
Right.
Here we have you putting up a monument to a Black soldier from World War I, different era, but it's fascinating. The idea, where did the idea from this come from?
Well, it actually came from a concept, that we tend to glorify, like the Confederate soldiers and so forth. We tend to glorify people that was against the United Nations, the United States becoming one. And here is a monument, a soldier that fought for a unified America. He wasn't Confederate. He was a person that believed in America. But anyway, in Chicago, this monument still is alive. You can see it, you know. And,
This is based on a real life
oh yeah,
monument in Chicago.
the 369th Battalion, and there were other battalions. In World War II, there was the Battle of the Bulge, the tank commanding battalions. I mean, these were black soldiers that drove huge tanks and actually fixed them when they broke down, just to free Europe from the grip of tyranny.
Preston, if we can, I'm going to turn the questions over for a moment to Sue Katz, and I'd like to work our way around to the synagogue, if we can. It seems a good story.
I will take your lead. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, let's see. Here's some subjects. Did you see any that you?
I'm just finding all of it fascinating, and you are such a phenomenal storyteller. So, you know, I think whatever you want to share with us, we would be happy to hear. I'm finding this quite fascinating and mesmerizing, to tell you the truth.
Well, I'm sure there's a lot that John had mentioned, you know, people outside.
What is this right in front of us with the tree and the cars and?
Well, this is a very strange image. You'll notice it again. Here is that tree that we saw in the Letitia piece. So
Right.
that tree to me symbolizes a gathering place. It's like the baobab trees. In various cultures think of it as the Mother Earth, the object with its extended arms, bringing people to its largeness, its size, and a lot of similar Native American culture also. Well, in fact, all people on this earth seem to embrace the idea of one particular object that is the mother of everything. I think it's a beautiful image.
We have in the Jewish faith a tree of life that we talk about. So yeah,
Yes.
very much. I did see something over towards the front that I think was called a dark cave. Dark tower. I'm sorry, that I was wondering what that was.
Oh, okay. Well, there was a very famous female hairstylist in those days, and Madam C.J. Walker. And she had invented this product. It's a hair product. And just think of something like that, a simple something to fix or glorify or beautify the body through hair doing, because I can remember hair doing in my family. But this is her invention, along with, there was another very famous person, one she's from Peoria, not from Peoria, but she lived in Peoria, from St. Louis. Pardon?
Annie Malone.
Annie Malone.
Yeah.
Thank you, John. Yeah, Annie Malone. But that place that you spoke of is where they gathered.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's right. It's up in
Okay.
front. I think it's right on.
It's right
Yeah, it's right there.
here, where her daughter. I'll wait for a camera. I think yes.
Yeah, it's right here.
And I'll stand behind the building like a giant person. But this is Alelia Walker, and she is the daughter of Madam C.J. Walker. And she somehow shared the formula of Molly. Yes, Mrs. Malone, but she shared that, and of course, Mrs. Malone was the originator of the formula. I just want to get that straight. But she built this magnificent building here for her daughter,
Oh,
and it was a gathering place for artists and poets.
okay.
In the 1940s, something like that happened, and in England, where all races gathered, usually in dark little places, you know, underground, and jazz was born, bebop music, and again, there was that blending of people from Israel and the Jewish community who supported jazz. Now, these are stories people don't want to talk about, or somehow they're hidden. But there was a marriage between those groups that was unbelievably beautiful. And I used to think of it as they caught a piece of that funk. and they loved it so much. And they being people of the Jewish community. I mean, why can't we talk
Yeah.
about that? Benny Goodman, and I mean, all of the groups, Big Spiderbeck, and I'm talking about the people of mixed backgrounds could play with the best of the musicians. They shared this, not only musically, but the business of pop music was shared and created by a few cultures.
Preston, while you're here, do you want to take us down a stroll down? We haven't been down this street yet. I see there's a theater and I think the synagogue's there, and there's quite a bit in here that people would probably like to see.
This one's quite busy, isn't
Yeah,
it? Again, we see the World War I soldiers, the musicians, and I think he's either lighting a cigarette on the street, but the gestures that I inserted in these are gestures of people that are doing rather very simple things that speak loudly. I mean, just covering a man covering up the wind from himself, lighting a cigarette. Well, somehow something in us assumes that position, and we become that person. And so that gives it life, I think. That gives the whole thing life. But people walking on the streets freely and crowded, because merchandise was a thing, and people were concerned with each other. And so that's where the blending. Mrs. Heinkel, the Heinkel's family down on the end of Sunset Street, very big part of our family, and also the Wagners, and we had an Italian family, but these are direct descendants. These people were new, just like African Americans coming from the South. All of these people were connected, and they brought their cultures with them, and their cultures were respected.
Well, and I think we all enriched each other by
Yes.
that sharing of our cultures. We all brought different things to the table, as it
I like
were,
that word, enrichment.
and we all benefited. We all grew from it. What am I looking at over? Do you want to go this way?
Yeah, let's go
Okay, we'll
down
go
this
down
way.
that way.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you mentioned the synagogue. Yeah. And there were a lot of African American Jewish people. And I'm sure you all know about it, but a lot of this has been left out of our history books. We weren't taught these things, but they were there. Dark-skinned Ethiopian people and from other places. There was people of the Muslim faith that was a part of my neighborhood. And so much that we do to respect.
We've been having a lot of discussion in the Jewish community about racial equity, and one of the things that has really been a topic of concern of a topic of discussion that hadn't been before is Jews of color within the Jewish community.
Yeah.
That
it was well known. We
need to
didn't
be,
understand it thoroughly, but it was like, who are these people, and why,
Right.
yeah, and why do they pray like that, or what? But there they were.
Yeah, the
Now,
Jews.
isn't that cool? I mean,
There are Jews in every corner of the earth, so we
Yeah.
come in all different colors and shapes and sizes.
Yep. Let's get in here somehow. Let's go to the round table. Is that okay with you, Sue? You still wanna
Absolutely.
join me on this? I'm glad you mentioned this tree here, the tree of life too. There it is again.
Yeah.
With his arms, spread out, and the same thing that we see in Muslim faith are spoken about. I put this in here because it's kind of a dedication to my friend Richard Hunt. He's an artist, a few years older than me, and I've always thought of him as the god of art. I would go to him but I use that metaphor for just about everything, but it's very serious and very real. Did you know? Of course you did. There were Muslim Americans, with a movement that occurred here, very strong in the 60s.
Yes.
But there was a blending, a gathering of both faiths or all faiths of people in small pockets of the world, fighting for assimilation, fighting for together. But they sold these little bean pies. And when I was a younger person, it's these little bean pies that was such a part of their beliefs and their religion.
Huh.
But at the same time, African Americans were going through another big change of recognizing the pride, and that's where the Black Panthers and Fred Hampton came in. These events was a blending of that. So it's like so what does potpourri?
And this
Okay.
is a musician, I see, with a
Right,
violin or
Yeah, this is a guitarist,
guitar. Okay.
Charlie Christian, and Mike Alamana, and Curtis Robinson, all these great musicians all in one, hailing a cab. And it was hard for them to get a cab, especially if you're going up to Harlem. And when I lived in Chicago for 27 years, it's so difficult for me to get a cab, but I'm still here.
Preston, tell us of cars everywhere. Almost every one of these has cars. The fascination, you see the police car and the cab, and
Right.
you mentioned the Mercedes back there, this great green
Yeah.
truck.
Yeah.
Why
British.
so many cars? What's your fascination with cars?
Well, it's just not cars, but it's like the manufacture of the automobiles, the people who invented these things, and the variety of shapes coming from culture, variety of different cultures. We see this modern look that came out of the World's Fair, but it's a Chrysler Airflow, and here, not being so much aware of it but here people concerned about the way objects floated through the air. So the science, through the air, yes. The science was changing along with attitudes at the same time. And we see the German automobile, the Mercedes-Benz, the history of it. They made tanks, they made airplanes, and created war objects of destruction with the Nazi kind of thing. You can't forget and know this stuff. We see the British, their input. We see this Bentley, a blown Bentley. It has a blower on it, early form of supercharging. But this same company, the battle over Britain, the Spitfires, the great battles that took place, and for stupid reasons, but here they are on the ground, rolling on wheels, same attitudes. We look at, what's his name, in St. Louis, the Spirit of St. Louis. What was his background about? Okay, so anyway, Henry Ford, what was his politics, What was, what objects, this is why I'm bringing this up. We tend to look past these things, but they're important. Like this airplane that we see flying over, the Tuskegee Airmen, and that's a flying object, It's like these automobiles, and here's a police car. What's going on today with the police and communities? What's going on today? This piece is so rich with making questions, creating questions. Let's go back to the Mustang. This was a very stealthy flying object. We were so good at making objects that kill. We were so great at it. What if we turn that ability of making objects into the ability to create tools, things that can cure cancer? These pilots, in fact, they were in my neighborhood. These older guys in my neighborhood, like the Dansby brothers, Bobby and Ellis. He was a pilot, Ellis Junior Dansby, and he flew a Mustang. And they were marked special. They were called the Red Tails from Tuskegee. Now, are those things not important? This piece is loaded.
Preston, we have about 5 more minutes.
Mhm.
So what would you like to finish with here?
How about the plantation piece all the way back there? Okay. All right. We're going to walk through the piece, give you an idea of the size of this. We can go on forever. We can spend a couple of more hours.
We
you know?
could.
But that was my intentions, you know. The Italian Bugatti. Well, a Bugatti was a French make, but I like to think of Bugatti as part Italian and French. Okay, but we know about what happened in Ethiopia, don't we?
Yes.
Look here. This is a plantation house. This is a building designed from the profits of cotton. Now, you see how I can take one object and you build on it and you say, it's like tentacles. It has history in other places and it's doing, it's addressing other things. It's connected. It just doesn't pop up and say one particular thing, Cotton built this house. Picking cotton built America. And I don't care who's responsible, but know that all of these things are connected and used for good, the power is magnificent. And here's Mr. Kalinsky. He's standing outside his place of business. And there were a lot of Nazis in America in those times, and they used to have parades, especially the Ku Klux Klan, but there were Nazis here. And he's standing there guarding his place with a hammer. And should I say more? I don't have to. Poverty, the ills of alcohol, people sleeping on the streets in those days, World War I soldiers coming back and building Tent City. We have gypsy-like people whose love for animals and survival, 1920s. What does this have to do with it? Well, this piece right here, the combing of the hair. Well, I just talked about Alelia's, Madam C.J. Walker, controlling the so-called unruly Negro hair. You had to produce products, but that was all good. That was very interesting. And the idea of changing your physicality, changing your looks to fit in, that's all well and good. It should not be looked upon. It's interesting too, definitely it's interesting. Okay, but I saw this plantation house in Jackson, Mississippi. I spent time there, giving lectures and workshops. And the people living in that area embraced me, And we had a group of, both white Americans and Black Americans coming together in that one spot for that short period of time. And we created so much love. We all we were very sad when we had to break up and go back to the rest of the world.
And Preston, what is behind the house?
Oh, behind the
Yeah,
house.
behind the house. I'm wondering
Okay.
if it's what I think it is.
The back door. This is slave quarters back here. And we have the elderly gentleman here playing a harmonica while his wife is peeling potatoes and a squirrel perched on his knee. Isn't that a peaceful scene? It feels like a place that you can go to and forget about the atrocities that's happening around you in the backside of the building. We have the Regal. I think this is my favorite table, John. I think this
The Regal,
Uh-huh.
the Regal.
Yeah, this
Tell us
particular-
about this.
Oh, a place of entertainment. A place, it still existed when I was doing my student teaching in Chicago. And then when I did my professional teaching at the Art Institute, it was still there and changed hands and so forth. But people like Sammy Davis, Lena Horne, I mean, just great entertainers. They all.
Who do we have here?
We have one of the dances, they're doing the Lindy Hop. It's a particular dance, but this was their place of enjoyment. This is where they take, a break from bad treatment.
At the Regal, at the Regal.
Right.
Well, Preston,
Mhm.
come step into here. We'll stay
Okay.
our social distance. But let me, on behalf of the Peoria Riverfront Museum and Susan Katz of the Jewish Federation of Peoria and our friends who are with us from Israel right now, and all of you and the membership, Visionary Society members of the Peoria Riverfront Museum, let me thank you for joining Preston Jackson for an extraordinary walkthrough. 1 hour, as Preston said, we could have taken many more, and there's much more to come from this piece. This piece will continue to speak to us and through us and bringing our community together for years and decades to come. Preston is magnificent, magnificent. Anything you want to say as we stand in the midst of 25 years of your life put into this piece here? Anything you want to say sort of to conclude our talk today?
Well, I enjoyed this, and I hope to do it more. And I enjoyed Sue coming here. It's good to see you. You kind of give me reason and encourage me to speak up. I can see it in your face, in your mannerism, that you're very proud, and that's what I want to happen. And John, wow, you brought this here.
Well, my whole team did. Our board of directors and our staff, and Bill Conger, our chief curator. We want to thank Carolina Huser, who's done camera today, and Heather Plackow, who's done a magnificent job for our education team and engagement team. And we're going to do much more of it. And Sue Katz, thank you. I'm going to let you sort of close this out.
I want to thank the museum and thank Preston, and I want to thank you for sharing so much of yourself, because the messages that you gave us about sharing cultures and people coming together are messages that resonate here in our own country, but they also will resonate in Israel. Because as I said, the Western Galilee is a very diverse part of Israel, and we see Arabs and Jews and Christians all living together, sharing their cultures, working towards a common good. And so much of what you said resonated so deeply with me here, and I think it will resonate with our friends in Israel. So I want to thank you so, so much for giving us this extraordinary tour of this absolutely incredible exhibit. It just was so moving and amazing. I can't think of the words. So thank you so much for doing this for
Can I
us.
say one more thing? I'd
Yes,
like to thank
please.
my wife, and my daughters, Alice and Natalie, for putting up with me leaving. And anyway, but I don't want to forget that one.
Good people to thank. And Joy Kessler, who stands over
Joy
there.
Kessler is
Yeah.
my assistant.
3 cheers for Joy Kessler, who puts it all together. So thank you all for
Thank you.
tuning in.
John, is it possible just to say one word? I would really like to thank Mr.
Wow.
John
Okay, let's get a
Jackson.
picture of the 3 of us up front before we remask so we can see our faces.
So we would like to thank Mr. Jackson and the Jewish Federation and the Museum of Peoria. Thank you very much for this event. Next time, we would love to hear Mr. Jackson play as well. And we could do this jazz session, which would be really cool. Thank you so much. And I want to say to our community opinion leaders, participants, that next month will be hosted by Julie and Stephen Toledo. I will send out the invitation in a couple of days. But to the people in Peoria, thank you so, so much. This has been tremendous. And thank you so much. Shalom from the Western Galilee.